Hello and welcome back to Biology Chapter 8 is the immune system. Immune system goes very easily if you just need to know where things are going. We have hematopoietic stem cell that originates in a precursor in a bone marrow, and that gives rise to lymphoid stem cell and myeloid stem cells. The lymphoid stem cells lineage gives rise to the T progenitor and B progenitor, which goes on to make helper T cells, cytotoxic T cells. B progenitor goes and make plasma and B cells. And the myeloid stem cells goes ahead and generate the granulocytes, monocytes, eosinophil, basophil, mast cells, megakaryocyte, karyocyte, erythroid stem cells. And then goes red blood cells, basically. Now, how do we look at this table? Well, we have the T cells starting from lymphoid stem cells. The T cells are helper T cells that coordinate the immune response, and the cytotoxic T cells kill the infected cells directly. What the helper T cells do is they latch on the CD4 antigen presented on MH2 class molecules presented by the macrophages and the dendritic cells. And you look at that and say, okay, this is an external pathogen antigen. So they look at it, present it, and they go ahead and launch the immune response. Cytotoxic T cells, they recognize the Ch.8 cells, antigens on MHC class 1 molecules that is on the cell. That is useful for virus infected cells because that comes from the our own body cells. So they go straight up and kill the virus infected cells. Now, how do we differentiate the two? Well, think about CD8 molecules with cytotoxic. They ate the cell, right? Okay, speaking of eat and ate, granulocytes such as neutrophils, eosinophil, basophils, they all have stuff in their cell, whereas agranulocytes, they don't have stuff inside the cell. So that's T cell, all the lymphoid cells plus monocytes. Now, how do we differentiate monocyte and macrophage? Well, monocytes are kind of like the precursors that float in the bloodstream, but when they enter the tissue, they become macrophages. Macrophages are different in different parts of the body. For example, in the brain, the macrophage is called microglia, and on your skin, the macrophage is called Langerhans cells, and so forth. They have their own specific regional name. The macrophage, they basically eat the pathogen and they present the antigen, like the little ID marker, onto the surface so that helper T cells and others could recognize that and pass on the information to the B cells so they can produce antibodies to launch a counterattack. Now, what's next? Eosinophils target parasites specifically, and they're really good against that. Neutrophils are really good at just eating everything in general. They just eat bacteria, they eat little substances, and just keep the bloodstream clean. Basophil and mast cells basically launch the inflammation response to swell up the area and launch more immune cells into the area to help get rid of the pathogen. Megakaryocytes basically give rise to the platelets, so they help with the blood clotting progress. Erythroid progenitor cells, stem cells, they give rise to the red blood cells, and as we know, red blood cells, they deliver O2 and receive CO2 from the cells. Right, we have innate versus adaptive immunity. What's innate? Well, innate, basically, we don't really have to do much. Our cells don't really have to launch an attack. It's just natural. It's like a natural body defense, like epithelial blockage or GI tract with acid in them. Complements from the cells binding, non-specific binding, and interferons, just non-specific immunity. But adaptive is specific to a certain pathogen and it has a target that it will kill, such as humoral uses antibodies to bind specifically to the antigens, or cytotoxic to kill exactly the cells that do have the virus infection. We also have the lymph organs, which is needed to store the lymph cells. So bone marrow is where B cells, think about B producing bone marrow, are produced and matured. Thymus is where the T cells are produced and matured. Well, no, matured. They are all produced in the bone marrow, but they all mature at different places. So they mature at thymus for T cells, and they undergo positive and negative selection. So positive selection is when they have to actually kill the cells that are infected, and negative selection is when they accidentally kill the bad, the ones that are good, and they get kicked out. Alright, and the secondary lymph organs are lymph node, thoracic duct, spleen, and tonsil, where these T cells are stored and get ready to launch an attack. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the immune system.